Okay, hello and welcome. Chris here, T-Titan, and in this video I'm going to walk through how to find profitable niches. This is kind of an introduction to finding profitable niche markets or topics that we can target and focus on within Teespring and within Facebook. So before I move forward, obviously the word niche is pronounced as niche, I think, in North America. I, of course, am British, so tomato, tomato, it doesn't make a lot of difference. It's the same information. But that's why I pronounce it niche. So a niche is simply a topic, which is basically an interest that a group of people have in common. So, for example, here are some niches. Firefighters, that's people whose profession is firefighters. Labrador owners, people who own Labrador Retriever dogs. Violin players. Miami Heat basketball fans. Those are all different niches. And the cool thing about niches is that we can kind of sub-niche it, so we can break it down even further. So not only firefighters, but people who are fire chiefs, which is like sort of the boss of the firefighters, I guess you'd call it. Labrador owners, we could turn that into, say, chocolate Labrador Retriever owners, so people who own a specific breed of Labrador dogs. Violin players, maybe people who not only play the violin but play in an orchestra or in a band. Miami Heat fans, for example, we could turn that into not only people who like the Miami Heat basketball team, but maybe people who like a specific player, or maybe people even who, although they support the Miami Heat, live elsewhere in the United States. So, we can kind of get very clever and very flexible with our niches, and very often the niche keyword that we go in with, as we start to research it, we'll find that maybe the best part of the niche isn't our original search term, it's maybe something related. So we might go in thinking that Labrador owners is the kind of the core of the market, our core niche, and actually when we dig around we'll see that, for example, chocolate Labrador retrievers is where it's at, and where all the t-shirt designs are, and where all the targeting is, and where all the money is. So we can be flexible with our niches also. But essentially, there are several rules that we want to look for in finding profitable niches. So first things first, as I've mentioned several times, and as a consistent theme throughout this training, we're going to be advertising on Facebook, and consequently, we need to have interest that we can target, that we can advertise to on Facebook. Otherwise, there's no point. If we can't advertise to them, we can't reach them. It doesn't matter if we've got a design, we can't drive traffic to it, so there's no point. And specifically, those interests need to have an audience of between 100,000 people and 1 million people. And that's a pretty broad range, actually, but it kind of gives us a sweet spot, which is that it's a big audience, but it's also quite targeted. If we start getting, beyond a million, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 10 million, etc., then it's probably not going to be the most targeted audience. And the traffic might be difficult to convert. On the flip side, if it's less than 100,000 people, the problem there is it's going to be quite small. So even if we generate sales, we're not going to make a ton of money. And also what happens with Facebook is that you'll kind of very often refine your audience even further. So you'll start with an audience of 100,000 people, but then you'll only target women, for example, or you'll only target men aged 25 and up. And so that audience that's 100,000 will very quickly drop down to maybe 50,000, 30,000, 20,000, which is, a pretty small number, and it's a number that it's going to be difficult for us to really, generate a lot of t-shirt sales from a 20k audience, whereas we can start with an audience of, say, 200,000 people, cut it down, and it'll still only drop down to 100,000, which is a good enough number for us to run with. So the first rule is that we want to have a Facebook audience of at least 100 to 1 million, 100,000 to 1 million people. The second thing is we want to see ideally that there are already people selling t-shirts, and that tells us that the supply, that people are supplying t-shirts to this particular niche market, this group of people. Which also suggests that there's demand. So if we see lots and lots of t-shirts on Teespring, eBay, Amazon, Winalo, Pinterest, all over the internet, well, those t-shirts are probably there because people are buying t-shirts. And it stands to reason if they're buying other people's t-shirts, well, they're also going to buy our t-shirts too. Now, we don't always require there to be t-shirts already existing and already being sold online. In fact, we kind of have to strike a balance between, on one hand, going after the markets where there are lots of t-shirts, but there's probably also quite a bit of competition because everyone can see that there are t-shirts there, especially if the t-shirts are already being sold on Teespring. And on the other hand, we kind of want to go to a market where there isn't a ton of competition. We can be the first ones into it, and so we can make the most money. So it's kind of like a balancing act, I suppose. And for that reason, sometimes we will go after markets where there aren't t-shirts for sale, but at the very least, really, we want to see that there are some products for sale. So we want to see people spending in that particular niche market. It could be that we've, for example, found, let's say that we're thinking of targeting, let's say the astronomy niche, which is people who want to use telescopes to look at stars. Well, even if we can't find any astronomy t-shirts, we can do a quick search and see that telescopes cost a lot of money. They cost hundreds, even thousands of dollars. We can also see that there are magazines that are targeting astronomers. We can see that there are books, that there are courses, that there are lots of different things that people in that niche are already buying. So even if we don't see t-shirt sales, t-shirts for sale, we at least want to see that there are some products in the market that relate to our niche, and that shows us that people are willing to buy and spend money in general in that niche market, and hopefully that will translate to t-shirt sales if we can come up with the right t-shirt design that's going to excite those people. Now, I'm going to throw quite a bit at you in this video and in some of the other videos that relate to niches. But don't worry, the basic idea of the way that we approach niche research is to open up several tabs in our browser, maybe one for Facebook advertising, one for Google Images, one for Amazon, one for eBay, maybe a couple of others. And we just take our keywords, firefighters, Labrador, violin, Miami Heat, or whatever it is, and we just search it in all of the different tabs at once, and we just kind of dart back and forth and see which ones work. So the idea initially is to build up a big list, lots of different keywords, and then search those keywords against all these different sites, get a feel for what the niche is really about, make a decision as to whether it's a good niche, and if it is, we move on to the next step. So it's actually quite an easy organic process that we're going to follow. What I want to do now is just give you a few examples of monster niches. Now you'll see me reference this site, TView. If you literally just Google TView, it's the first match that comes up, and it's basically like a competitive intelligence site that pulls all of the top-selling T-shirts online into one place, basically. So you can go there and just search firefighter, and you'll see that like 100 matches come up. You can arrange by best-selling. You can search engineer or nurse or any keywords you can think of, and you can get a very, very quick overview as to how well that particular niche is selling on Teespring. Now, it doesn't mean that all of the t-shirts that are selling on Teespring will show up. It's possible, and actually it's encouraged, for T-Titans to hide your campaign from Google and from sites like TView, but it will at least give you an overview of of what's kind of selling in the market. So anyway, based on my own testing, based on lots of campaigns that I found, not just with TView but with other places, these are all niches that have generated over $100,000 in t-shirt sales on Teespring. And while they're probably too competitive for you to go into right now, because the market's kind of been rinsed out, they're very competitive, and the niches are kind of too obvious, but I'll list them here as obvious examples of good niches, just so you can kind of understand what a good niche looks like and then apply it to the stage where you have to find your own niches. So firstly, engineers. These are basically, it's a profession, it's basically people who are either electrical engineers, software engineers, there's a whole range of engineers. But what makes this particular niche a good one is several things. Firstly, they all hang out together. And what that means is that very often they'll all work in the same department, they'll all be friends with one another. And so if you can advertise a t-shirt to a particular individual who's an engineer, if he likes the t-shirt, even if he doesn't buy it himself, he'll very often share it with his friends, tag a friend, that kind of thing. And so consequently you can get a lot of free traffic that way. And you'll see this with a lot of the best niche markets. They tend to all hang out together, they work together, and consequently when you can advertise to them, they'll very often share it amongst the friends, they'll very often give you a lot of free traffic that way. The other good thing with engineers, of course, is that they're well paid. It's a very technical job, a job that requires several years at university to get a degree or whatever. And so consequently, these guys have got good, stable incomes, which means they can, more than afford to buy one of your t-shirts. And then finally, engineers by their nature are quite technical people, and so they tend to be online a lot. So, they're an audience which is very much active on Facebook. Firefighters is another huge one. Firefighters is a great one for several reasons. People are proud to be firefighters, and also you'll see a lot of t-shirts that are targeting not just firefighters but the wives or the moms of firefighters as well. And so people are proud to have, raised a firefighter, and so the family members will also brag about their children being firefighters or their brother or whoever it is being a firefighter. It's also a very shareable thing. People love to, remind everyone on their Facebook wall that my son's a firefighter or that I'm a firefighter. And then finally, of course, it's all also very well paid. If you're a firefighter, it's a good income, and so once again, they're able to afford our t-shirts. Dog lovers is one that is, very, very popular. It's probably a little bit played out, if I'm honest. There's lots of people who've done it, but and there's lots and lots of breeds. You can do Labradors, Rottweilers, German Shepherds, West Highland Terriers, Yorkshire Terriers. There's just so many sub variations um, of dogs. But basically, the reason it works is that people are very obsessed with the pets. They love the pets. They're very defensive, and they spend money on the pets. If your pet's ill, if your dog's ill, you have to take it to the vet. It's going to cost you several $100s, maybe even more. You have to spend, maybe a few $100s a month on pet food. You have to take the animal for a walk, and so people invest a lot of time and money in their pets, and consequently, they're very committed to their pets, and they want to, sort of brag and show off and tell the world about about their dog, about how they love Yorkshire Terriers or whatever it is. And so dog lovers are a very kind of good niche for that reason. Nurses, again, you can see it's a profession. Professions tend to be really big with t-shirts. Nurses are a good niche. Again, it's kind of very played out. There's a lot of people who've done nurse t-shirts, so I kind of don't want you to be thinking just of these niches, but think of them as templates and try and look at why these work and then use them to find other niches. But nurses are generally unrecognised. It's a very difficult job, very hard job, and I've had a few friends who are nurses, and they've told me things like it's the kind of job where you don't get a lot of respect. You kind of get ordered around a little bit sometimes by the doctors. And yet, nurses have got a very difficult job, and it's also the kind of job where it's a very nice job, it's very caring, it's helping people. So it's the kind of thing where people and nurses will very often want to wear these t-shirts to show that they're, very caring, and also to kind of, I suppose, get a bit of recognition for what is a difficult job. The majority, I think about 90% of the nursing profession is female. I've also seen, speaking very, very generally, some of the best niches tend to target females. So women, moms, that kind of thing. Those niches tend to do very well. For whatever reason, women like to buy these t-shirts. Obviously with nurses, it's also a well-paid job. It's lifelong. It's probably a job for life, and so they can more than afford our t-shirts. And then the final example is football teams, and these people who support American football teams, NFL, or indeed this applies to any sport, by the way, but in particular to NFL and football. People are very passionate about those niches. That's the first reason. The second reason that it's a good niche to target is that it's a localized, connected niche. So if you support the Denver Broncos, chances are you're going to live in Denver. And if a lot of your friends are going to support the Broncos as well. So again, kind of going back to our engineer niche about them all being connected and hanging out together, if you can target them via Facebook ads, very often they'll share it with their friends who will also be Denver Broncos fans. And consequently, we can get a lot of free traffic. So it's very, very shareable. Just one final point though regarding football teams, be careful of not breaching any intellectual property. So for example, Denver Broncos is a trademarked phrase. You couldn't use that on a t-shirt. You couldn't use the slogan, and there's probably lots of other phrases and words and color schemes and general themes and feels that you couldn't use on a t-shirt. So entering a niche that relates to a protected brand or name does deserve some kind of respect, and you have to tread with care. But nonetheless, football teams are an example of a niche that a lot of people have done very well from. So, there's with Teespring, there's like I said before, there's literally like an infinite amount of niches that you could target. But what I've tried to do here is to give you a framework of the main categories of niches, so you can kind of think through, maybe brainstorm some examples and see if they fit within these different categories. So firstly, professions. People have done very, very well, myself included, targeting professions on Facebook. So examples of professions: nurses, accountants, teachers, firefighters, engineers. There's a couple of ways you can target them on Facebook as well. The first is by within Facebook ads, there's an actual field we can target people via job title, employer, or profession, and then we can also target people who maybe like a particular trade magazine, so they like Travel Agent magazine. Maybe they like a particular fire department, so we think they're a firefighter. Maybe they like an engineering blog, so we think they're an engineer. Or they like a teaching association, so that we think that they're teachers. But targeting people who are particular professions is often a very good way to generate some good sales with Teespring. The next category, I've called them owners. Okay, and these are basically people who own things. And very often these things that they own are high maintenance. So, for example, pets, we've already talked about dogs, but of course there are many types of pets: dogs, cats, iguanas, spiders, snakes. There's a huge, huge number of pets. Cars, these can be, people who just own a nice car, for example, a Ferrari, or maybe people who own classic cars. There's lots of sort of sub niches to that as well. Beards, believe it or not, is a good niche, and I've kind of included this here to show how eclectic and weird some good niches can be. Kids, now I know it's kind of, I've put kids in the owners category, which is kind of a bit weird, I suppose, but I deliberately put it here because the idea is that by owners, I mean that people own something that's expensive to maintain or own, and I think most parents would agree that children certainly fall into that category. So the basic idea is the more expensive something is, the more that people have to spend a lot of money and invest a lot of time to maintain something, the more passionate they're probably going to be, and the better the buyer they're going to be. So kids obviously isn't really something that you own as such, but it just goes to show that the more expensive to maintain or own something is, the better the niche probably will be. Buyers, so these are basically people who have bought something. It could be equipment, for example, some bodybuilding equipment, perhaps a gym set or a weight set or something like that. It could be a fishing rod. Tickets, people who've gone to see a show, maybe they've attended Burning Man Festival, maybe they've gone to see a particular artist perform, maybe they've attended a concert somewhere. Events, kind of tied in with tickets, I suppose. Conferences, maybe there's like a real estate agent conference that goes on every year. Maybe there's an internet marketing conference. Sports, we've talked about that, but that's something that people certainly spend a lot of money on. Rental, things that people maybe rent, and recurring, which is, like if you've got like a phone contract, that's an example of a recurring product. People pay for it every single month. And this kind of idea of buyers, it overlaps with a lot of other niches as well. But the idea here is that if you can target people based on products or brands, or basically things that if you were to if you were to get that thing, you would have to pay for it, then that really helps you drill down and think about what's important in your niche. Because if people are paying for something, if they're paying for a telescope, or they're paying for a computer, or they're paying for a microphone or a violin, or whatever it is they're paying for, if you can target that, a brand of a violin, or you can target a brand of a microphone, or a particular type of telescope that people have to buy, then it's really going to help you drill down and try and understand that niche. And chances are, if there are people buying a lot of things in a niche, it's a good niche to be in. Passions, these are things people are passionate about: celebrities, places, life events, games, films, music, basically things that people really, really do care about. And sub-niches, which is by sub-niches I basically mean you take any of these niche categories and you break them down into kind of a smaller niche. So when we think of professions, we might think of teachers, but we can go one further and only target science teachers. We could target nurses, or we could sub-niche it into a nursing assistant, which is kind of a subcategory of that profession. And instead of targeting Labradors, we could target Labradoodles, which are a crossbreed between Labradors and Poodles. So, the basic idea is that when you think of a niche, for example, um, let's say the Denver Broncos is like a sports team, that could be a niche. We can then break it down and we can target a specific player, or we can target a specific game that they might go to, or a specific, we can basically take a broader niche and break it down into something smaller, and that can be a really profitable tactic. We can also look at variations of all of these niches. So instead of targeting firefighters, we can target firefighters' moms. Instead of targeting engineers, we can target engineers' wives. Instead of targeting teachers, we can target trainee teachers. We can target husbands, girlfriends, locations. So, for example, people who support the Denver Broncos but live in Boston, for example. There's always all these different ways that we can take a niche and break it down into something else, basically. So we've looked at some of the most successful niches on Teespring, and we've looked also at some categories of niches. But what makes a good niche? Well, the first thing, if you remember, I said earlier, is that the best answer is t-shirt sales. So we basically want to see that there are people already selling t-shirts on sites like maybe Teespring, although that can sometimes suggest high competition, but certainly on sites maybe like eBay, Amazon, Wanelo, and all these Redbubble, all these other sites. The next best answer is that people are spending online, so they might not be buying t-shirts as such, but they have to be spending money on something, or at the very, very least, they need to be, really, really passionate. So very quickly, there's sort of three key things I suppose you could look at. The first is, can you see t-shirts or products for sale for that particular keyword on sites like Teespring, Amazon, eBay, etc. If there are no products being sold to those people, if when you go and you take the word violin or firefighter or Denver Broncos and you put it into Teespring, you put it into Amazon, you put it into eBay, you put it into Google Shopping, you don't see any results, that's generally not a good sign, because if there's no supply, if there are no products being sold, well, chances are that's because there's not money to be made. Now, it doesn't always have to be that way, but very generally, if we don't see products being sold in a particular niche for a particular keyword, then it means there are no products. That means suggests that there are no buyers, and so it's probably not a good idea for us to launch a t-shirt in that niche. The second thing we want to see is we want to see passion. So would people kill or die for that passion? Well, obviously in the case of pets, yes, people certainly would. A lot of people would, are very, very protective about the pets. Do people care about the sports teams? Absolutely. People have, got into fights and, do all kinds of crazy things because they love the sports teams. They get very sad when they lose and stuff. And so those are two very good niches that certainly fall into that category, and that should give you something to think about. The other thing about passion is that passion translates to high conversions, which is important because if we're sending traffic to the Teespring page, and for every 100 people who click through, all of whom we pay for, by the way, every click we pay for, if 100 people click through and we only sell 1 in 100, then it's going to be difficult for us to make any kind of money because we're paying for our traffic. On the other hand, if people are very passionate, and let's say that 10 people out of 100 go through and buy, so you've got a 10% conversion rate, it's going to be far, far easier for us to make money. In fact, if we've got a 10% conversion rate, we can probably do a lot of other things wrong and still make a lot of money. So passion is important because passion translates to high conversions. Pride is also very important because Facebook is an organic, open thing, and what we want is we want people to share it, we want people to like it, we want people to comment, and they'll only do that if it's something that they're proud about. So would they share or brag about their niche? Would people brag about owning a pet? Well, of course they would. Would they brag about a sports team? Yes. Would a mother of a firefighter brag that her son is a firefighter? Heck yes, of course they would. And the benefit to that is that they're more likely to share it. It's going to give us free traffic on Facebook, and it's going to improve our quality score and do all kinds of things that we want to happen. So pride is also very, very important. But one final point, which is I mentioned this at the start of the video, and there'll be an entire section on this. There must be Facebook interests to advertise to in order for us to proceed. So if there aren't Facebook interests for a particular niche, then chances are it's probably not a good niche. Now, in the long run, what you really want is you want to have almost a portfolio of good niches. So as you continue to test, you launch more and more different campaigns. And what you want is, with time, you want to build up this is only a rough number, but between 3 and 20 good niches that you've sold t-shirts in, that you've got a fan page in, that you've built leverage in, that you understand the market in. So the idea is to get this portfolio of profitable niches, and they can be a mixture of niches that other people have sold in that are proven, and they can also be a mixture of secret niches that only you discovered and only you kind of know about. And what will happen is, as you launch more and more designs in these different niches, you'll start to build up leverage. You'll start to build up data and knowledge about that particular audience, what kind of designs they like, what they don't like, and what makes them buy and what makes them click on ads and things like that. You'll also start to build up fan pages. So as you promote these designs, just by kind of as a bonus side effect, you'll also build up fans, and that's useful because it's almost like building a list, and we can go back and sell more designs to those guys down the line. And then finally, you'll also start to build up audiences using things like retargeting. So you'll basically kind of get long-term leverage on Facebook, and it'll become easier and easier for you to sell to those same niches again. And you're not limited either by just selling t-shirts. You can launch websites, you can create ebooks, and you can do other physical products, stickers, iPhone cases, things of that nature, and sell to the niche. There's lots of ways that you can monetize this portfolio of niches that you'll be building up with time. But really, every journey starts with a single step, I suppose. And your journey from your first $1 to hopefully at one point over $1 million, that journey really starts with testing lots of niches quickly and seeing what works. And remember, with Facebook, testing is the price that you pay for data, and it's the price that you pay for exploring new directions, seeing what works, and basically working out which niches are going to work for you. Luckily, with the system, you don't have to spend a lot of money in order to test designs, to test niches. But the basic idea is that you certainly want to have a bias towards action. Do lots of testing, get lots of data, and it'll translate not just hopefully to short-term cash that you'll generate when you sell your designs, but also to long-term leverage. So if you think in terms of the long-term strategy as well as the short-term money making, then I think that's certainly a good way to look at it. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.